terms of reliability and being on time and all those things. Um, so why can't we do that for if it works well between London and Edinburgh? Why can't you do it from there to York or to Liverpool or to Cardiff or to Southampton or wherever it might be? There's no reason why we couldn't just have those kinds of options available. And the point about it is that if you live, Harry, I don't know where are you speaking to me from? Which part of the country are you in?
Sussex.
Sussex. Okay. So what's your local train station in Sussex?
It's Sussex. What is it? Southern Rail. Southern Rail.
Okay. So if instead of at the moment, if Southern Rail makes some, yeah, if something goes wrong on Southern Rail, there's no choice. There's no alternative service that you can have. If instead you had four or five different companies all running trains through your past your local station to various London but other destinations too, it would mean that if one of them had a strike or had a mechanical breakdown or a timetable meltdown or whatever it might be, the other three or four of them would still be working. And it might mean that the train that you were waiting for didn't turn up when you wanted it to, but there'd be another one along in 15 minutes time and you can get on that instead. If you think about it in the same way, it's it's basically it's basically the same as air travel. So at the moment, if you want to fly between London and Paris or London and Edinburgh, um, you have a choice of, I don't know, half a dozen different carriers between London and Paris, probably a slightly smaller number than that between London and Edinburgh. Um, and there's no franchise, there's no nationalized a requirement. You have choice, and if you don't like what one of them is offering, you can choose another one. Why can't we do that for our trains as well? And that's what open access is. And it just strikes me as absolutely balmy that when you've got something that works really quite well, that we're saying, no, 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 we don't want to do that. We want to go back to something which worked really badly 40 years ago and make the same mistakes all over again. Why on earth would you want to do that?
Would you support the same sort of thing for the water industries, so having multiple water providers, and
Um,
etc.?
well, so yes, oddly, you could, if you think about what happens with energy at the moment, and the energy sector's got all sorts of problems as well. But one thing that it does do reasonably well is if you or I want to have a different energy supplier, we can get hold of one quite easily. So you can, if you want to switch to Octopus, then it's your right to do that. And if you don't like what Octopus is offering and you want to switch to somebody else, you can do that too. Um, and nobody stops you, and it means that you can shop around for a better deal or a greener form of energy or whatever it might be. Um, you can't do that with water at the moment. And it's quite possible that some water providers, if you're a farmer with a reservoir in your in an irrigation reservoir you're not using, you might be able to supply water into the pipes rather cheaper than the existing rubbish water company in your area. And at that point, Harry, you should be able to say, well, I don't want to have the existing rubbish water company in my area. I want to have water provided by this lot. And and at that point, you should be able to switch supplier. It all comes to you through the same pipe. It's all the same quality of water, but you're buying it from somebody else. Um, and there, the parallels with energy are quite good, and would be helpful, I think, definitely. I think there's a bigger problem with how the pipes are being maintained and run, and how much we're all paying for that, how much leakage there is, and how many overflows there are, and that's why we're all worried about having sewage overflows into rivers and those sorts of things. Those sorts of things are different and would need a different solution. But at the very least, yeah, let's give people a choice of a water supply in the same way as you can choose your energy supplier today.
So sort of a demonopolization, sort of.
Yes, absolutely. But you've absolutely nailed it there, Harry. And the point about it is, as a conservative, I'm a free marketeer. And every conservative I meet, doesn't matter if they are a one nation conservative or much further to the right of that, everybody is a free marketeer in our party. And monopolies therefore are a bad thing. And they're a bad thing because they rip people off. You either get lower quality or you get higher prices or both if you have a monopoly than if you don't. So let's try and take on the monopolies. They are the vested interests. And if we can show that we're on the side of consumers, whether it's of water or of energy or of anything else, cars, cornflakes, doesn't matter what, if we are on the side of consumers, then A, our economy will grow faster. B, our jobs market will be better. And C, voters will love us for it because they'll know that we're on their side rather than on the side of the vested interests. My problem with the devolution settlements, which it was begun under Blair, that we haven't yet rolled out in the Centre for Small State Conservatives a devolution paper, although there is one in the works. So I shall offer you a small teaser to say there is going to be something on this quite soon. But just to sort of summarise the problem at the moment, most people, when they talk about devolution, they talk about moving decision making from one bit of the political arena into a different bit of the political arena. What they don't talk about is making the decisions better. Yeah. And then if the decisions aren't better, then they come along and say, oh, well, we're going to move them from a police and crime commissioner to a regional mayor. Well, why is that going to be any better? I mean, what is it that's actually going to make a difference there? And so what worries me is that you end up with an awful lot of people who don't raise the money. They aren't responsible for levying the taxes, which raise the money that they spend. And therefore, what they do is they spend their entire time with their hand out, blaming Westminster for all their problems, because they don't actually have to raise the taxes. So that all that they want to do is to spend more money because it doesn't cost them anything politically. And I think that's a very dangerous place for us to be. And it also means that you end up with with policies which aren't necessarily economically responsible. And you don't have accountability because ultimately, if someone's going to spend money on my behalf, I want them to have raised the taxes from me so that I can vote for them. And if I don't like what they're doing and I think the taxes aren't being spent properly, I can vote the rascals out. But if you have the spending separate from the tax raising, which is what's happening in quite a lot of our devolution settlements, then at that point, you're in a very dangerous place. And that's what worries me at the moment. And I just don't think that that anybody's really fixing that. And I think it's something which is important. And the odd thing is that I'm a big fan of lots and lots of local councils that do have to raise taxes. They may not raise all the money that they spend, but they raise a goodly chunk of it. And an awful lot of councils are really pretty efficient. They're not all perfect, and goodness knows if they're not run by Conservatives, they're even less likely to be perfect. But local councils are often pretty tightly run ships. Not always, but often they are, and so particularly Conservative-run ones. And they, I think, show what can happen if you get good local people who are practical and who are dedicated to making their community better, but they know that they have to look their neighbours square in the eye and say, I have raised your taxes in order to raise more money, but the reason why I've done it is because we get that over there pointing at whatever it is they spent the money on in exchange. And if they can justify that to their neighbours, that's a much healthier devolved settlement than something that says, I spent a load of money and I'd have spent even more if it wasn't for those beastly people in London who won't give me any more. And that's just fundamentally not a healthy place, I think, for any democratically elected person to be.
I mean, unfortunately, it's happening here in Sussex. But we have the great Katie Bourne who's running. What do you think? Things like the water industry and the train lines can be done by the mayor, or even just put pressure on in local areas?
Well, I think I think a good Conservative local mayor will probably be better than some of the other parties. Absolutely right. Yeah. But I think my argument would be for something like trains. Actually, you don't want to have politicians involved with them very much at all. If you're going to go to an open access model, it's all about passenger power. It's about passengers making decisions about which of the 4 or 5 different services through your local station they want to take. That doesn't take a politician to make a decision about it at all. It takes a politician to set up the system so that you can run 4 or 5 services. But that wouldn't be that, that's already happening in some places anyway. So roll that out and then get the politicians out of the way. You end up with a smaller state with less political meddling, and happier passengers, because you don't end up with politicians telling them what to do and which train to take.
Do you have any final messages or?
I guess the only thing I just say is, um, as we mentioned earlier on, this whole idea about small states and having bigger citizens needing smaller governments just strikes me as an idea whose time has come, because we have high taxes already in this country and they're going up under the Labour government. So they're historically at a pretty high level. Because we have high borrowings in this country, and public finances, government finances that are under really serious strain already. It just strikes me that the scope for even bigger government will be very, very small indeed for the foreseeable future until we have fixed those problems. And so the only answer, I think, is a small state. And if you look at what happened under, for example, Margaret Thatcher, what she did was a whole series of supply side reforms to make the economy and the country work better and more efficiently. If we can do those again, or the modern equivalents of them, then you end up with something which has the huge advantage. Supply side reforms don't cost taxpayers very much at all. In fact, if anything, they can save them an enormous amount of money, and you get a huge electoral bounce from them as well. So I just think there's a big opportunity here. If anybody wants to come and join in, sign up, and we'll send you details. And equally, if anybody's got an idea elsewhere in other parts of the political spectrum, which they want to put forward to the party's leadership, join CPF. As I said, it's free, and we'll make sure your ideas get noticed and get in front of the leadership.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Harry.